This weekend is a time for remembering. My mum's side of the family come from Eastbourne in Sussex, and ever since I was little, I've been taken for long walks over the South Downs. My mum would remember growing up during the Second World War, and she'd point out places where planes had crashed into the side of the hill. The crater was still visible, even though it's covered with grass and bushes. Standing at the top, she'd show me where bombs had destroyed the houses of her friends. We could see where her school stood and where they had to hide when there was an air raid. In more recent times, she's shown my children the same landmarks. This is a time for remembrance. Old and young remember together those who have fought in conflict, both in the past and still today. Some will have memories of active service, thinking perhaps of friends and colleagues who have died or whose lives will never be the same again. Some will carry in their heart the memory of someone they love who was maimed or perhaps made that ultimate sacrifice. Many of us, though, have no experience of armed conflict. Our experience is limited to the news reports of the men, women and children caught up in war that appear on our television screens, probably while we're sitting comfortably, cup of tea in hand. This is my grandfather's diary. It's very precious to me. In the World War II, he was captured at Tobruk and spent the rest of the war in a prison camp. This diary is written in the smallest of writing to get as much in as possible. It's bound in paper used to send the Red Cross parcels. You can still see the Red Cross there. At the back of it are letters he wrote to my grandmother on birthdays, anniversaries and Christmas, heartbreaking letters that he'd never be able to send. And it gives me just a tiny glimpse of what he went through. He never talked about that time. He was silent on the subject. It wasn't that he didn't want to communicate. His diary shows just how eloquent he could be. I think it's more that there were no words to get across his feelings about that time. He'd seen things, done things and heard things that no one should ever have to see, do or hear. And silence was the only language to express the horror he'd seen. So in the silence we hold on Remembrance Day, there is deep, deep significance. It's the silence we hold together to recognise that for which we just don't have the words. The only way we can do justice to the memory and the cost of conflict, the sacrifice and the shame, is to keep silence together. But remembrance does more than that. In the silence, we're connected to such sadness, but we also resolve to live lives worthy of such sacrifice, to look forward to a future, to look forward hopefully. We can't afford to forget the past. Remembrance Day does remind us, though, that we have a duty to the future. We're all made in the image of God, and Remembrance Day reminds us just how far we are from being Christ-like. Over 2,000 years ago, Jesus was born into an occupied land. He lived and died in that land in an act of deepest, darkest violence. But we know that 3 days later, he rose again. And Jesus knew just how powerful remembrance was. The Apostle Paul tells us that the night before he died, Jesus took bread, blessed it, broke it, and gave it to his friends, saying, "This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, after supper, he took the cup, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this whenever you drink it in remembrance of me." At this point, we all long for the day when we can share in that act of remembrance again, an act which joins us to those who have gone before, those who are here now, and those who will come after us. And with this remembrance comes forgiveness and hope for the future. Because Christ has shown us a different way, a way of justice and of peace. There's that vision of the future we can hold on to, a vision in which there is hope, reconciliation and peace. There is still so much to do. And in today's world, we need vision, wisdom, sensitivity, patience, courage, sticking power, more than ever. We can't underestimate the pain, the complexity of changing things for the better. It needs all our prayer, all our commitment, if a better world isn't just something that's going to stay on our wish list. So this weekend, we keep silence, we remember, and we commit ourselves to following the way of Christ, who can bring hope where there's despair and light where there is darkness. There's a prayer which reads, "We entrust to you, eternal God, those times when we can see only shadows and lose sight of the hope to come. The times when suffering seems so senseless, life so fragile, war so unstoppable, and death so permanent. Bless us with the assurance that you are in all things, the tragic and the beautiful, the nightmare and the dream, the light and the darkness. This we ask in the name of Jesus Christ, the peace of the world, today, tomorrow, and forever. Amen."